information on this video about boundaries is something that I wish somebody had told me about 20 years ago. I now strongly believe that every area of our lives can be improved with healthy boundaries. And yes, this information is for everybody, but particularly for those of us who are highly sensitive and those of us who resonate with the label empath. So what exactly is a boundary? I'd like you to imagine a boundary as a fine line drawn around each and every single one of us that says, this is my limit, go no further. Think about it this way. Our skin acts as a physical boundary to protect the integrity of our internal organs. And there are endless of other examples, from relationships to time boundaries, health, money. We even have boundaries in our home, don't we? And boundaries are so important because they protect our uniqueness, they protect our integrity, our wholeness, and the important tender parts of ourselves. A boundary is not the same as a defense. A boundary allows discernment. Boundaries also helps us to get clearer on what we want to include and what we want to leave out. Whereas a defense leaves everything out, both the good and the bad. And defenses can actually do a lot of harm to us and our relationships. A defense can make a person appear rigid, shut down, frozen and stuck. So the whole point of setting a boundary is to preserve something that's important to us. A boundary helps us to discriminate and to sort out and filter incoming intellectual and emotional energies. And the reason why this is particularly important for highly sensitive people is because we are acutely empathetic. And if you think about what empathy is, it's the ability to walk in another's shoes, which means we are able to take on another person's energy and truly feel what it feels like for them. And this is where a lot of us get into trouble, because without healthy boundaries, we will start feeling drained and overwhelmed, not knowing where the other person ends and where we begin. If we don't have healthy boundaries in place, we will frequently feel exhausted after being in contact with people. And this is a classic indication that we need to be looking at our own boundaries. When we have weak boundaries, we allow too much of the other person in, or we give out too much to other people. In fact, whenever a person directs a thought or an emotion at us, we will become dysfunctional if we can't properly contain our energy behind a healthy boundary. Unhealthy or non-existent boundaries can attract dangerous situations to us. We leave ourselves open to be exploited, manipulated, and abused. And when we have no boundaries at all, we end up being victimized a lot. Whereas clear, defined boundaries protect us from harm. Boundaries are an act of self-esteem. They empower us to determine how another person is going to treat us and how they're going to communicate with us. We are the only ones responsible for how we spend our time and our energy. And having healthy boundaries requires us to be alert. Take, for example, communication boundaries. Many highly sensitive people feel very uncomfortable with confrontations. We may feel awkward or even undeserving of being heard. Many of us were raised in dysfunctional households, so we relate confrontation as a negative behaviour to be avoided. And this is where we learn to people please and to keep the peace at all costs. We never saw anger expressed in a healthy way, or we saw anger not expressed at all. So many of us don't know how to speak up for our own behalf. And this is the reason why so many of us have never known how to set healthy boundaries and how important they actually are. However, now we are adults and we must learn to love ourselves enough to speak up and be clear if someone has overstepped or violated a boundary of ours. We are each responsible for taking ourselves out of situations that are detrimental to our self-worth. If the other person continuously overtalks, is criticizing, minimizing, condescending or sarcastic, or refuses to acknowledge what's important to us. And these are just a few examples. If we allow our boundaries to be ignored, repeatedly disregarded, or violated, then we are actually participating in self-betrayal. And that is a very destructive pattern to silently endure. And if we participate in violating our own boundaries by allowing communication that is not respectful, we are actually acting against our own internal guidance. So in this respect, maintaining healthy boundaries helps us to be in contact with our true self, who we really are and how we truly feel. Boundaries show respect for our own inner voice, and that's why I believe boundaries are the ultimate act of self-love.